Bray from Italy is P5 on mediums. Best lap is a 4:00.940. Fireball in Rock is 4th. Toddy Mustang from New Zealand is 2nd on mediums. Best lap is a 1:31.324. Bray in WA 1/4 RTH is 6th. Johnny Prince is P3. Best lap is a 1:32.790. The qualification session is at Red Bull Ring Grand Prix Circuit in Spielberg, Austria. Dave B Racing from New Zealand is P1 on supers. Johnny Prince from New Zealand in Castrol Edge is P6 on mediums. That Canadian guy from Canada is 4th on supers. Bray from Italy is 3rd on mediums. Johnny Prince is P4. That Canadian guy in Red Bull Mobile is 2nd. Dave B Racing in Castrol Edge is P1 on supers. Dave B Racing is up 6.12 in Rock. Dave B Racing is up 5.94 in rent. Dave B Racing improved his P1 with a 1:31.937. That Canadian guy is P2. That Canadian guy is provisional pole with a 1:31.505. Fireball is 5th on mediums. Fireball improved is 3rd with a 133.165. 1.660 off pole. Jason Short from New Zealand is P6 up 8.94 on supers. Jason Short improved his P6 with a 152.337. 20.832 off pole. Dave B Racing is P2 up 0.24. Dave B Racing is up 0.20 in rent. Dave B Racing improved his 2nd with a 131.758. 0.253 off pole. Fireball in rent is 4th up 0.52. 5 minutes remaining in the session. Fireball improved his P4 with a 132.731. 1.226 off pole. Jason Short in Red Bull Mobile is P7 up 11.21. Jason Short improved his P4 with a 132.180. 0.675 off pole. Toddy Mustang from New Zealand in Pirelli is 3rd up 0.31 on mediums. Toddy Mustang is up 0.31 in Red Bull Mobile. Toddy Mustang improved his 2nd with a 131.511. 0.006 off pole. Jason Short in Pirelli is 4th up 1.06. Jason Short is up 1.16 in rent. Jason Short is provisional pole with a 131.056. The race dictator from New Zealand in rent is 6th up 10.72 on mediums. The race dictator improved his P4 with a 131.749. 0.693 off pole. Jason Short is P1 up 0.11. Jason Short is up 0.24 in Pirelli. Jason Short is up 0.45 in rent. Jason Short is provisional pole with a 1:30.585. The race dictator in Rent is P4 up 0.21. The race dictator improved is P2 with a 1:31.286. 0.701 off pole. Johnny Prince is P8 up 10.19. Johnny Prince is up 10.45 in rock. Fireball is P6 up 0.31. Fireball improved is P6 with a 1:32.653. 2.068 off pole. The qualifying session is now in overtime. Johnny Prince is P8. Johnny Prince is up 10.07 in Red Bull Mobile. Ray is P8. Best lap is a 1:34.570. 3.985 off pole. Johnny Prince from New Zealand is P7. That Canadian guy is P3 up 0.20. Johnny Prince in Pirelli is P7 up 1.88. Broadcast bot is P20. The race session is at Red Bull Ring Grand Prix Circuit in Spielberg, Austria. Jason Short is first. The race dictator from New Zealand is second on mediums. 20 minutes remaining in the session. Race start. Toddy Mustang from New Zealand in Castrol Edge is second on mediums. Toddy Mustang lost P2 to Dave B Racing. Dave B Racing from New Zealand in Remus is second on supers. Jason Short entering the pits is P8. Toddy Mustang is P3. The race dictator entering the pits is 7th. Toddy Mustang is now second. Ray from Italy is P4 on mediums. That Canadian guy entering the pits is P7. The race session is at Red Bull Ring Grand Prix Circuit in Spielberg, Austria. Bray from Italy is P8 on mediums. "20 minutes remaining in the session. Race start. That Canadian guy is third. The race dictator from New Zealand is second on mediums. Jason Short from New Zealand in Remus is second on supers. Toddy Mustang is seventh. Toddy Mustang is now P6. Fireball is P3 on mediums, 1.6 behind Dave B Racing. Toddy Mustang is 6th, 0.8 behind Bray. Fireball in Rock is P3, 2.0 behind Dave B Racing. The race dictator entering the pits is 8th. Toddy Mustang is P6, 0.9 behind Bray. The race dictator exiting pits on mediums. Fireball in Rent is third, 2.7 behind Dave B Racing. Toddy Mustang in Red Bull Mobile is P6, 0.3 behind Bray. Toddy Mustang passed Bray for 5th. Bray in Castrol Edge is 6th, 0.7 behind Toddy Mustang. Dave B Racing from New Zealand is P2 on supers, 2.2 behind Jason Short. Fireball is P3 on mediums, 0.7 behind Dave B Racing. Fireball is now 5th. Dave B Racing is second, 0.7 behind Jason Short. Fireball in WA14 RTH is 4th, 0.2 ahead of Toddy Mustang. Fireball lost P5 to Bray. Dave B Racing from New Zealand in Rent is P2, 0.4 behind Jason Short. The race dictator entering the pits is P8. 15 minutes remaining in the session. Fireball is P5, 0.6 behind Bray. Fireball is now 6th. race session is at Red Bull Ring Grand Prix Circuit in Spielberg, Austria. Fireball is 6th on mediums. 20 minutes remaining in the session. Race start. Jason Short from New Zealand is 2nd on supers. Toddy Mustang from New Zealand in Remus is P3 on mediums. Jason Short is P2. Toddy Mustang in Pirelli is 3rd. Jason Short is P2. Toddy Mustang in Red Bull Mobile is 3rd. Jason Short in Castrol Edge is P2, 0.2 behind the race dictator. Jason Short passed the race dictator for 1st. Toddy Mustang in Remus is P3, 1.0 behind Jason Short. Toddy Mustang is now P2. That Canadian guy entering the pits is P8. Bray from Italy in Rock is 4th on mediums, 1.8 behind Dave B Racing. The race session is at Red Bull Ring Grand Prix Circuit in Spielberg, Austria. Bray from Italy is 8th on mediums. Bray entering the pits is 19th. 20 minutes remaining in the session. Race start. The race dictator is 2nd. The race dictator passed Jason Short for 1st. Jason Short from New Zealand is P2 on supers. Toddy Mustang from New Zealand in Remus is 3rd on mediums. Toddy Mustang lost 3rd to Johnny Prince. Johnny Prince from New Zealand is 3rd on mediums. Toddy Mustang in Pirelli is P3. Bray exiting pits on mediums. Toddy Mustang is now P2. Jason Short entering the pits is 8th. Johnny Prince is P2. Dave B Racing from New Zealand in Red Bull Mobile is P3 on supers. Bray entering the pits is P7. The race session is at Red Bull Ring Grand Prix Circuit in Spielberg, Austria. Dave B Racing from New Zealand is 5th on supers. Jason Short entering the pits is P19. 20 minutes remaining in the session race start. Dave B Racing is now P4. Toddy Mustang from New Zealand is second on mediums. That Canadian guy from Canada in Remus is P3 on supers. The race dictator from New Zealand is P2 on mediums. That Canadian guy is third. The race dictator is P2. That Canadian guy in Red Bull Mobile is third. The race dictator in Castrol Edge on lap 2 is second, 0.6 ahead of that Canadian guy. That Canadian guy on lap 2 is P4, 0.1 behind Dave B Racing. That Canadian guy passed Dave B Racing for P3. Dave B Racing from New Zealand is fourth, 0.8 behind that Canadian guy. That Canadian guy is third. Best lap is a 1:39.298. 1.186 off the fastest lap. Dave B Racing in WA14 RTH is fourth, 0.9 behind that Canadian guy. That Canadian guy in Red Bull Mobile is P3 on supers, 0.7 behind the race dictator. The race dictator in Castrol Edge is second, 0.8 ahead of that Canadian guy. That Canadian guy is third, 0.6 behind the race dictator. The race dictator is third, 0.3 behind that Canadian guy. That Canadian guy is second, 0.4 ahead of the race dictator. The race dictator in WA14 RTH on lap 3 is P3, 0.4 behind that Canadian guy. Johnny Prince from New Zealand in Rint is fifth on mediums, 0.5 behind Dave B Racing. Johnny Prince was 1.5 faster last lap. The race dictator is P3. Best lap is a 1:31.672. 0.124 off the fastest lap. 15 minutes remaining in the session. Johnny Prince is 5th, 0.1 behind Dave B Racing. The race dictator on lap 4 is P3, 0.4 behind that Canadian guy. The race dictator passed that Canadian guy for second. Johnny Prince in Rock is P4, 0.5 behind that Canadian guy. That Canadian guy is P2, 0.4 behind Toddy Mustang. The race dictator in Pirelli is third, 0.2 ahead of Johnny Prince. That Canadian guy is P3, 0.1 behind the race dictator. That Canadian guy was 0.9 faster last lap. The race dictator in Red Bull Mobile is P2 on mediums, 0.3 ahead of that Canadian guy. That Canadian guy was 0.9 faster last lap. That Canadian guy in Castrol Edge is P3, 0.4 behind the race dictator. The race dictator in Remus is second, 0.2 behind Toddy Mustang. That Canadian guy is P3, 0.5 behind the race dictator. The race dictator is second, 0.2 behind Toddy Mustang. That Canadian guy is third, 0.6 ahead of Dave B Racing. The race dictator in Red Bull Mobile is P2, 0.3 behind Toddy Mustang. The race dictator was 1.1 faster last lap. That Canadian guy in Castrol Edge is third, 0.4 behind the race dictator. The race dictator is second. That Canadian guy is third on Supers, 0.1 ahead of Dave B Racing. The race dictator is second, 0.6 ahead of that Canadian guy. Jason Short exiting pits on Supers. That Canadian guy in WA 1/4 RTH on lap 6 is third, 0.3 ahead of Dave B Racing. The race dictator is second, 0.7 behind Toddy Mustang. That Canadian guy is P3, 0.1 ahead of Dave B Racing. That Canadian guy lost P3 to Dave B Racing. 10 minutes remaining in the session. The race dictator is second, 0.8 behind Toddy Mustang. That Canadian guy from Canada is fourth, 0.3 behind Dave B Racing. The race dictator is P2, 0.3 behind Toddy Mustang. That Canadian guy in WA14 RTH is fourth, 0.2 behind Dave B Racing. The race dictator in Rent is P2. That Canadian guy is fourth, 0.7 behind Dave B Racing. The race dictator is P2, 0.4 behind Toddy Mustang. That Canadian guy is fourth. Best lap is a 1:31.704. 0.487 off the fastest lap. The race dictator on lap 8 is second, 0.3 behind Toddy Mustang. That Canadian guy is P4 on Supers, 0.5 behind Dave B Racing. The race dictator in Rent is second, 0.8 behind Toddy Mustang. That Canadian guy is P4. The race dictator is second, 0.8 behind Toddy Mustang. That Canadian guy on lap 9 is fourth, 0.2 behind Dave B Racing. The race dictator in Rock is second, 0.7 behind Toddy Mustang. That Canadian guy in Pirelli is P4, 0.5 behind Dave B Racing. The race dictator is P2, 0.8 behind Toddy Mustang. That Canadian guy is P4, 0.9 behind Dave B Racing. Dave B Racing is P3, 1.0 behind the race dictator. The race dictator on lap 10 is second, 0.7 ahead of Dave B Racing. 5 minutes remaining in the session. Dave B Racing is P3, 0.4 behind the race dictator. The race dictator in Pirelli is P2, 0.7 behind Toddy Mustang. That Canadian guy is fourth, 0.5 behind Dave B Racing. The race dictator is second, 0.3 behind Toddy Mustang. Dave B Racing is P3, 0.3 ahead of that Canadian guy. Dave B Racing was 0.5 faster last lap. The race dictator in Rent is second on mediums, 0.5 ahead of Dave B Racing. Dave B Racing in Red Bull Mobile is P3, 0.4 ahead of that Canadian guy. The race dictator on lap 11 is second, 0.1 ahead of Dave B Racing. Dave B Racing is third, 0.1 ahead of that Canadian guy. Dave B Racing is now P7. The race dictator is second, 0.7 ahead of that Canadian guy. That Canadian guy was 1.8 faster last lap. That Canadian guy is third, 0.5 behind the race dictator. The race dictator in WA14 RTH is P2, 0.3 ahead of that Canadian guy. That Canadian guy is P3, 0.3 behind the race dictator. The race dictator is second, 0.6 ahead of that Canadian guy. Johnny Prince is fourth, 1.0 behind that Canadian guy. That Canadian guy was 0.6 faster last lap. The race dictator is P2, 0.3 behind Toddy Mustang. That Canadian guy on lap 12 is P3, 0.9 behind the race dictator. The race dictator in WA14 RTH is second, 0.3 behind Toddy Mustang. That Canadian guy from Canada in Rent is third, 0.3 behind the race dictator. Bray from Italy is 6th on mediums, 0.6 behind Dave B Racing. Bray was 2.3 faster last lap. That Canadian guy is P3, 0.2 behind the race dictator. The race dictator is 2nd, 0.2 ahead of that Canadian guy. That Canadian guy on lap 13 is P3, 0.3 behind the race dictator. The race dictator in WA14 RTH is 2nd, 0.2 ahead of that Canadian guy. Toddy Mustang is P1, 0.8 ahead of the race dictator. The leader has just finished the race. Toddy Mustang finished P1. The race dictator finished P2. That Canadian guy finished 3rd. Johnny Prince finished 4th. Dave B Racing finished P5. Bray finished P6. Fireball finished P7. Jason Short is P8. Jason Short from New Zealand finished 8th. Broadcast bot is P9. The race session is at Red Bull Ring Grand Prix Circuit in Spielberg, Austria. Fireball is 1st on mediums. 20 minutes remaining in the session. Race start. Dave B Racing from New Zealand in Castrol Edge is P2 on supers. Dave B Racing passed Fireball for P1. That Canadian guy from Canada in Remus is P3 on supers. That Canadian guy passed Fireball for 1st. Fireball is P2. Fireball is now second. Jason Short from New Zealand in Pirelli is fourth on Supers. Jason Short passed Fireball for P3. Fireball is fourth. Jason Short in Red Bull Mobile is P3. The race dictator from New Zealand in Castrol Edge on lap 2 is fourth on mediums, 0.3 behind Jason Short. The race dictator passed Jason Short for P3. Jason Short is P4, 0.3 behind the race dictator. The race dictator is P3, 0.2 behind Toddy Mustang. Jason Short is fourth, 0.8 behind the race dictator. The race dictator is third, 0.5 behind Toddy Mustang. Jason Short in Red Bull Mobile is fourth, 0.4 behind the race dictator. The race dictator in Castrol Edge is fourth, 0.4 behind Jason Short. Dave B Racing is P5 on Supers, 1.0 behind the race dictator. Jason Short is third, 0.5 ahead of the race dictator. The race dictator was 0.9 faster last lap. The race dictator is fourth. Best lap is a 1:32.313. 0.433 off the fastest lap. Jason Short from New Zealand is third, 0.7 ahead of the race dictator. The race dictator is P4, 1.0 behind Jason Short. Jason Short in Castrol Edge on lap 4 is P3, 0.6 behind Toddy Mustang. 15 minutes remaining in the session. Johnny Prince from New Zealand is 7th on mediums, 0.9 behind Fireball. Jason Short is third, 0.4 behind Toddy Mustang. The race dictator from New Zealand is P4, 0.8 behind Jason Short. Jason Short was 1.2 faster last lap. Jason Short is third. Best lap is a 1:30.911. 0.270 off the fastest lap. Jason Short passed Toddy Mustang for P2. Toddy Mustang from New Zealand in Red Bull Mobile is third on mediums, 0.5 behind Jason Short. Jason Short is second, 0.3 behind that Canadian guy. Toddy Mustang in Castrol Edge is third. Best lap is a 1:31.222. 0.581 off the fastest lap. Jason Short is second on supers, 0.7 behind that Canadian guy. Toddy Mustang is third, 0.3 behind Jason Short. Jason Short is P2, 0.5 ahead of Toddy Mustang. The race dictator is P3, 0.5 ahead of Toddy Mustang. Jason Short in WA 1/4 RTH is second, 0.8 behind that Canadian guy. Jason Short was 1.1 faster last lap. Toddy Mustang in Rent is fourth, 0.4 behind the race dictator. Jason Short is P2, 0.7 behind that Canadian guy. Toddy Mustang is fourth, 0.4 behind the race dictator. Jason Short is P2, 0.8 behind that Canadian guy. Toddy Mustang is fourth, 0.5 behind the race dictator. The race dictator was 1.5 faster last lap. Jason Short in WA 1/4 RTH on lap 6 is second, 0.4 behind that Canadian guy. Toddy Mustang from New Zealand in Rent is P4, 0.1 behind the race dictator. That Canadian guy is second on supers battling Jason Short. 10 minutes remaining in the session. That Canadian guy passed Jason Short for first. Jason Short is second, 0.3 behind that Canadian guy. The race dictator is P3, 0.9 behind Jason Short. Jason Short in Rock is second on supers, 0.2 ahead of the race dictator. The race dictator in Pirelli is third, 0.6 behind Jason Short. Jason Short is second, 0.5 ahead of the race dictator. Jason Short was 1.4 faster last lap. The race dictator is third, 0.3 behind Jason Short. Jason Short is second, 0.4 behind that Canadian guy. Jason Short was 0.6 faster last lap. The race dictator is P3, 0.4 ahead of Toddy Mustang. Jason Short is P2, 0.1 behind that Canadian guy. Jason Short is now first. Dave B Racing is P3, 0.1 behind Johnny Prince. Fireball in Rock is P4 battling Dave B Racing. Fireball was 3.3 faster last lap. Fireball passed Dave B Racing for P3. That Canadian guy in Pirelli is P6 on Supers, 0.4 behind the race dictator. Fireball is third, 1.8 behind Johnny Prince. That Canadian guy is sixth, 0.6 behind the race dictator. Fireball is P4. Best lap is a 1:32.520. 1.879 off the fastest lap. That Canadian guy in Remus is P5. Best lap is a 1:30.641. The race dictator in Rock is P6, 0.4 behind that Canadian guy. The race dictator was 1.7 faster last lap. The race dictator is now fifth. Toddy Mustang on lap 9 is sixth, 2.1 behind the race dictator. The race dictator in Rent is P5 on mediums, 0.9 behind Fireball. Fireball was 5.2 faster last lap. 5 minutes remaining in the session. Jason Short in Castrol Edge is second, 0.8 behind Johnny Prince. The race dictator is P5, 0.6 behind Fireball. Jason Short is second on Supers, 0.7 behind Johnny Prince. Fireball in Rock is P5. Jason Short in WA 1/4 RTH is P2, 0.6 behind Johnny Prince. Fireball on lap 10 is P5, 0.4 ahead of Toddy Mustang. Jason Short from New Zealand is P2, 0.1 behind Johnny Prince. Jason Short passed Johnny Prince for P1. Johnny Prince is second, 0.2 behind Jason Short. Johnny Prince passed Jason Short for P1. Fireball in Remus is sixth, 0.4 behind Toddy Mustang. Toddy Mustang was 1.9 faster last lap. Johnny Prince is second, battling Jason Short. Fireball in Pirelli is P6, 0.4 behind Toddy Mustang. Johnny Prince in Red Bull Mobile is P2, 1.1 behind Jason Short. Fireball is sixth on mediums, 0.6 behind Toddy Mustang. Dave B Racing from New Zealand in Remus is P3, 1.6 behind Johnny Prince. Johnny Prince in Rock is second, 1.8 ahead of Dave B Racing. Dave B Racing in WA14 RTH is P3, 1.6 behind Johnny Prince. The Race Dictator in Red Bull Mobile is fourth, 1.8 behind Dave B Racing. Dave B Racing is third, 1.3 behind Johnny Prince. Toddy Mustang in Remus is fifth. Dave B Racing is third, 1.2 behind Johnny Prince. Jason Short is P1, 4.1 ahead of Johnny Prince. leader has just finished the race. Johnny Prince finished first. Dave B. Racing finished second. The Race Dictator finished third. Toddy Mustang finished P4. Jason Short finished fifth. Fireball is sixth. Fireball finished P6. That Canadian guy finished P7. Broadcast bot is P8. Toddy Mustang from New Zealand is second. Jason Short from New Zealand is first. Best lap is a 1:42.028. Toddy Mustang is second. Jason Short in WA 1/4 RTH is first. Toddy Mustang is second. Jason Short is P1. Toddy Mustang is P2. Best lap is a 3:28.464. Jason Short is first. Toddy Mustang in Pirelli is P2. Jason Short is P2.